Let me begin by noting that in sharing this account, I've chosen to use names that are not the real ones involved. They're simply placeholders to make the story easier to follow for you all while protecting the privacy of those who experience these events. The true identities remain confidential, as is often the case in matters like this. This story takes us back to Pasadena, California, right at the start of the 21st century, around 2003. Pasadena is a place many of you might know for its blend of everyday suburban life and cutting-edge science. It's home to the California Institute of Technology, or Caltech as folks call it, and the Jet Propulsion Laboratory run by NASA. The city sits in the shadow of the San Gabriel Mountains with clear skies that make it ideal for stargazing. In fact, up on Mount Wilson, there's an observatory that's been peering into the heavens for decades. It's a community where intellectuals and families mix, attending lectures, hiking trails that wind up to about 5,000 feet elevation, and enjoying the mild weather temperatures, often in the 70s Fahrenheit during the day. At the center of this account is a man I'll call Allan Whitaker. Allan was 48 years old at the time, a respected astronomer at Caltech. He was tall and lean, maybe 6 feet 2 inches, with wire-rimmed glasses that he was always adjusting, and a habit of carrying around an old leather-bound notebook where he'd jot down observations, sketches of star patterns, or even quick calculations. Allan wasn't the flashy type. He was methodical, the kind of scientist who double-checked every data point before drawing conclusions. His work involved leading projects on comet observations, using the big Hale telescope up on the mountain, a massive instrument with a 200-inch mirror that could capture light from billions of miles away. He'd spend nights up there, sometimes until the early morning hours, wrapped in a jacket against the chill that drops to around 40 degrees Fahrenheit at that altitude. Allan lived in a modern home on Arroyo Boulevard, a quiet street lined with palm trees and craftsman-style houses. The place had a great view of the mountains, and on clear evenings, you could see the city lights twinkling below like a miniature galaxy. He shared this life with his wife, Laura, who was 46 and a physicist at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, or JPL. Laura was energetic, with short-cropped hair and a voice that carried authority without being overbearing. She worked on projects related to space exploration, analyzing data from probes sent to other planets. At home, she and Allan would have these lively debates over dinner, nothing heated, just intellectual sparring. Laura leaned toward the idea that the universe was random, governed by laws of physics without any grand design, while Allan would counter with thoughts on how everything seemed too finely tuned to be mere chance. It's like a cosmic symphony, he'd say, with a conductor behind it all. They had a son, Nathan, who was 18 and just starting his freshman year at the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA, about 20 miles west in Westwood. Nathan was sharp, inheriting his parents' intellect, but he had a skeptical streak a mile wide. He loved science fiction movies, things like Contact or The Matrix, and would often challenge his dad on ideas about extraterrestrial life. "Dad, if aliens are out there, why haven't they shown up yet?" he'd ask during family meals. Nathan drove a used Honda Civic to campus, commuting to save on dorm costs, and spent his free time tinkering with computer simulations of planetary orbits in his room. The Whitakers were an active family in the community. They'd attend public science talks at the Huntington Library or Caltech seminars open to the public. Allan had a faint religious background from his Catholic upbringing, nothing fervent, but he'd occasionally pull out an old Bible and read it more as historical literature than scripture. He found comfort in passages about the stars, like in the book of Job, where it talks about God binding the Pleiades or loosing the cords of Orion. It was a quiet faith, not something he broadcasted, but it colored his view of the cosmos as something wondrous and perhaps purposeful. That summer of 2003 was particularly busy for Allan. The weather was hot days, pushing 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and the skies were unusually clear due to low humidity. He was up at the observatory more than usual, tracking a comet that had been spotted earlier in the year. One evening, while browsing the Caltech library stacks rows of books stretching hundreds of feet, he stumbled upon an old tome on medieval astronomy. It was dusty, bound in cracked leather, probably from the 14th century, with pages filled with intricate diagrams of celestial spheres, mathematical formulas in Latin script, and interspersed prayers invoking divine guidance for understanding the heavens. Curiosity got the better of him. Allan checked it out and took it back to his lab. A cluttered space filled with computer monitors displaying star charts, stacks of printouts, and a small coffee maker that always seemed to be brewing. Late one night, alone under the fluorescent lights, he flipped through the pages. One section caught his eye, a ritualistic incantation labeled as a call to the stars, meant for astronomers seeking deeper insight. It was in Latin with notes suggesting it was a blend of science and mysticism from the Middle Ages. Allan, ever the rationalist, chuckled to himself. What harm could it do, he thought. It was just words on a page, a historical curiosity. So he read it aloud, his voice echoing slightly in the empty room. Something along the lines of, O stella caelestis, revela mihi secreta universi. O heavenly star, reveal to me the secrets of the universe. He didn't think much of it at the time. Closed the book, packed up, and drove home the 5 miles down the winding mountain road. That night, as he slept in his king-size bed next to Laura, he had a dream unlike any other. In it, a brilliant star streaked across the sky, falling toward Earth like a meteor, but slowing as it approached. It hovered, pulsing with an eerie light, and a voice emanated from it, deep, resonant, like thunder rolling over the mountains. I will grant you knowledge of the cosmos, it whispered, insights beyond your instruments and equations. But in exchange, there will be destruction, a price for peering too deep into the void. Allan woke up sweating, his heart pounding at about 100 beats per minute. He sat up, glancing at the clock, 3 in the morning. Laura stirred, but didn't wake. He dismissed it as fatigue from long hours, maybe indigestion from the late-night sandwich he'd eaten at the lab. But as he lay back down, staring at the ceiling fans spinning lazily, unease settled in his gut, like the first tremor before an earthquake. Little did he know that casual reading had opened a door, one that invited something ancient and malevolent into his ordered, scientific world. As the days turned into weeks, Allan threw himself back into his work. The comet observations were yielding fascinating data, its tail stretching thousands of miles, composed of ice and dust, reflecting sunlight and spectra that hinted at organic compounds. He presented preliminary findings to his colleagues in a conference room at Caltech, a space with whiteboards covered in equations and windows overlooking the campus lawns where students tossed frisbees. This could rewrite our understanding of comet formation, he said, pointing to graphs on the projector screen. His peers nodded, impressed by the precision. But privately, Allan started noticing small anomalies. His notebook, which he kept meticulously, began showing entries he didn't remember, making subtle adjustments to formulas, written in his own handwriting, but with a slight flourish he didn't recognize. He'd measure the comet's velocity again, using software that calculated in miles per second, and find predictions aligning perfectly with real-time data from the telescope. It was exhilarating at first. Colleagues patted him on the back, saying things like, "Allan, you're on fire this season." He even got an invitation to speak at the American Astronomical Society conference later that fall. Yet, the dream lingered. He'd find himself gazing out the window during lunch breaks, his sandwich half-eaten, pondering that voice. Laura noticed his distraction one evening as they walked their dog, a golden retriever named Max, along the 2-mile path in the Arroyo Seco Park. "Honey, you been quiet lately?" she said, squeezing his hand. "Everything okay up there?" She tapped her temple playfully. Allan forced a smile. "Just work stuff. That comet's keeping me up." Nathan, home for the weekend, picked up on it too. Over barbecue in the backyard, steaks grilled to medium rare on their propane grill, he teased his dad. "You look like you've seen a ghost, Pops. Or maybe an alien finally landed." Allan laughed it off, but inside he wondered if that incantation had stirred something. He revisited the book, translating more sections with online tools, learning it belonged to a medieval scholar who died mysteriously, poisoned by unknown means. The prayers weren't just fluff. They invoked entities from biblical lore, blending astronomy with apocalyptic warnings. By late summer, the heat waves subsided, temperatures dropping to the low 80s, and Allan's observations grew even sharper. He'd predict the comet's brightness, fluctuations down to the decimal, as if he had insider knowledge, but with it came fatigue, dark circles under his eyes, headaches that throbbed like a distant pulsar. One night at the observatory, elevation about 5,700 feet, with the air thin and crisp at 50 degrees. He adjusted the Hale telescope manually, its massive dome creaking as it rotated. Suddenly, the controls seemed to move on their own, locking onto a dark patch of sky where no visible object should be. He stepped back, heart racing. "Must be a glitch," he muttered, checking the wiring. But as he peered through the eyepiece, back up to the digital feeds, he saw it, a faint reddish glow, like a star winking from the abyss. That night, the dream returned, more vivid. The star spoke again. "I am coming closer. Accept my gift, and the universe will unfold." Allan awoke gasping, his pajamas soaked in sweat. He didn't tell Laura, not wanting to worry her, but he started reading the Bible more intently, focusing on Revelation passages about stars falling from heaven, poisoning the waters. As autumn approached, with leaves turning on the sycamore trees along the boulevards, the changes accelerated. Allan's notebook now had pages filled with red ink formulas he hadn't written, describing trajectories that defied known physics, as if accounting for unseen forces. He'd stare at them for hours in his home office, a room with bookshelves holding volumes on quantum mechanics and cosmology, the window open to a breeze carrying the scent of eucalyptus. One evening, alone in the lab after hours, his body seized up. It was like an electrical surge, muscles locking, vision blurring. He collapsed into a chair, and from his mouth came a voice not his own, low, gravelly, echoing as if from a vast emptiness. "I am Wormwood," it said, "the bitter star from the depths." Wormwood, many of you familiar with Scripture will recognize it from the book of Revelation, chapter 8, where a star falls from heaven, making a third of the waters bitter, symbolizing judgment and destruction. Through Allan, this entity began to reveal itself. It claimed to be a fallen angel, once a guardian of the stars in God's creation, but cast down for envy of the Lord's handiwork. "I was there at the beginning," it growled, "when he stretched out the heavens like a tent. But I sought to unravel it, to poison the light with darkness. Now it wandered the cosmos, seeking vessels, curious minds like Allan's to impart forbidden knowledge, turning discovery into calamity. The medieval book," it explained, "had belonged to that long-dead astronomer who'd summoned it intentionally, craving secrets of the stars, only to perish from a toxic madness that mimicked poisoning." Allan, in his innocence, had cracked the door open with that reading. As the possession took hold, Allan fought for control, his hands trembling as he gripped the desk. The voice faded, leaving him exhausted, slumped over. He drove home that night, the 10-mile trip, feeling endless, his mind reeling. Laura was waiting with dinner, spaghetti and meatballs, Nathan's favorite since he was visiting. But Allan could barely eat, excusing himself early. In bed, he whispered a prayer from childhood, "Our Father, who art in heaven." It brought fleeting comfort, but the seed was planted. Something had crossed into our world, blending the scientific pursuit of truth with ancient evil. This was just the beginning. As a priest who's dealt with similar cases, I can tell you that evil often masquerades as enlightenment, preying on our desire to know more than we should. But remember, true wisdom comes from God, not from whispers in the dark. The Whitakers' ordeal would test their faith in science in ways they never imagined. As the leaves began to turn in Pasadena that fall of 2003, with the Santa Ana winds kicking up dust and dropping daytime highs to the mid-70s Fahrenheit, Allan's life started unraveling in ways that no scientific method could explain. He confided a little in Laura about the strange dream and the voice in the lab, but he downplayed it, attributing it to stress from the upcoming conference. "Probably just my subconscious processing all that medieval nonsense," he'd say, forcing a chuckle over breakfast, where they'd sip coffee from mugs Laura had picked up at a JPL gift shop, emblazoned with Mars rover images. But deep down, Allan knew something was off. His work, once a source of joy, now carried an undercurrent of dread. At Caltech, his predictions about the comet's path became uncannily accurate. Using data from the Hale telescope, he'd forecast shifts in its trajectory down to fractions of a mile per second, accounting for gravitational pulls from distant planets like Jupiter, some 400 million miles away. Colleagues in the astronomy department, a mix of professors in casual khakis and grad students huddled over laptops in the common area, started calling him the Oracle. One afternoon, during a team meeting in a room with posters of galaxy clusters on the walls, he presented slides showing simulations that matched incoming telemetry from space probes almost perfectly. "How'd you nail that perturbation?" asked a fellow researcher, a woman in her 30s with a PhD from MIT. Allan shrugged, mumbling about refined algorithms, but inside, he wondered if those red-inked formulas in his notebook were the real source. The anomalies escalated subtly at first. One crisp evening up on Mount Wilson, where the observatory's dome loomed like a sentinel against the twilight sky, Allan arrived to find the telescope already aligned not to the comet, but to that same dark patch he'd glimpsed before. The controls, a panel of buttons and joysticks in the chilled control room, temperature hovering around 55 degrees thanks to the equipment's cooling fans, showed no log of manual input. He recalibrated it, his breath visible in the cool air. But as he stepped away to grab his notebook from his backpack, he heard the faint whir of motors. Turning back, the scope had realigned itself again. Heart pounding, he checked the software logs on the adjacent computer, a bulky desktop running specialized astronomy programs. Nothing. No errors, no hacks. Must be a software bug, he told himself, but his hands shook as he noted it down. Back home that night, after a 15-minute drive down the twisting Angeles Crest Highway, Allan flipped open his notebook under the warm glow of his desk lamp. There, amid his own blue ink entries, were more additions in that vivid red equations incorporating variables he'd never considered, like hypothetical dark matter influences that bent light in ways current theories couldn't predict. He stared at them, tracing the lines with his finger, feeling a chill despite the room's 72-degree thermostat. Who or what was guiding his hand? He hadn't written these. The ink even smelled faintly metallic, unlike his ballpoint pens. The fatigue worsened. Allan started nodding off during daytime hours, his head dropping onto folded arms at his office desk, surrounded by stacks of journals like the Astrophysical Journal and printouts of spectral analyses. Laura noticed the changes more acutely now. One weekend, as they hiked a 3-mile trail in the San Gabriel's elevation gain of about 800 feet, with views of the valley below, she confronted him. "Allan, you're pale. And those mumbles at night. Something about a bitter star. What's going on?" They paused on a rocky outcrop, the sun filtering through pine trees that stood 60 feet tall. Allan hesitated, then spilled more. The self-moving telescope, the notebook alterations. Laura, ever the pragmatist, hugged him. "We need to get you checked out. Could be exhaustion or something neurological." Nathan, back from UCLA for a visit, overheard the conversation while helping with yard work, raking leaves that had piled up to ankle depth in their quarter-acre lot. "Dad, that sounds like a plot from one of my sci-fi flicks," he said, leaning on the rake. But his tone was worried, not teasing. That evening, over pizza delivered from a local spot, pepperoni and mushrooms, extra cheese, Nathan suggested recording Allan's sleep talk. "I've got an app on my phone. Might help figure it out." Allan agreed reluctantly, feeling exposed. The first full manifestation came a week later in the lab after a long day. The sun had set early, around 6 p.m., casting long shadows through the windows overlooking the Caltech quad, where students hurried between classes under street lamps. Allan was alone, analyzing data on his monitor graphs, plotting the comet's speed at about 10 miles per second when the seizure hit again. His body went rigid, like a circuit overloading, muscles tensing to the point of pain. He gripped the desk edge, knuckles white, and that voice erupted once more. "I am Wormwood, the star of bitterness, fallen from the throne of light." This time, it didn't fade quickly. Through Allan's lips, Wormwood elaborated on its origins, its words tumbling out in a cadence that echoed ancient chants. It described itself as an angel once tasked with overseeing the celestial bodies, binding constellations, igniting supernovas billions of light years away. "I beheld the Creator's work. It intoned, the galaxies spinning like wheels within wheels, each star a testament to his glory. But envy consumed me. Why should he alone wield such power? I rebelled, seeking to infuse creation with chaos, to make the pure waters of knowledge turn foul. Cast down, it became a tool of divine judgment, as foretold in Revelation, a star plummeting to earth, poisoning rivers and seas, heralding woe. Wormwood's purpose now? To latch onto seekers like Allan, those who probe the heavens with telescopes and equations mirroring the hubris of Babel. I offer truths veiled from mortal eyes, it promised, secrets of black holes, devouring light, of multiverses branching like infinite rivers. But my gift curdles, it breeds destruction, turning wisdom into weapons. It referenced the medieval astronomer who'd owned the book, a monk in a European cloister circa 1300, who'd summoned it deliberately during a lunar eclipse, craving forbidden stellar lore. The man had gained visions of comets as omens, but died raving, his body racked by an inexplicable toxin that frothed at the mouth as if he'd drunk from polluted springs. Allan fought back mentally, sweat beading on his forehead despite the air-conditioned 68 degrees. Fragments of prayers from his youth surfaced, deliver us from evil, but the entity clung. When it finally released him, Allan slumped, gasping, the clock showing he'd lost 20 minutes. He stumbled to his car, a reliable Toyota Camry, parked in the faculty lot, and drove home on autopilot, the 8-mile route blurring. Laura insisted on medical help the next day. They visited Dr. Marcus Hale, a neurologist at Huntington Hospital, a facility about 3 miles east with state-of-the-art imaging suites. Dr. Hale, in his late 60s with a neatly trimmed beard and a calm demeanor honed from decades in practice, ordered an MRI. Allan lay in the machine, a narrow tube humming loudly, for 45 minutes as magnets mapped his brain in slices thinner than a dime. The results showed irregular activity spikes in the temporal lobe, like electrical storms, but no tumors, no lesions. Could be epilepsy or stress-induced, Hale said in his office. Walls lined with diplomas from Johns Hopkins. He prescribed anticonvulsants, small white pills to take twice daily with meals. But the meds didn't touch it. Allan swallowed them dutifully, morning with oatmeal, evening with salad, but the whispers persisted. He'd catch himself muttering about the bitter star during mundane tasks, like washing dishes in their stainless steel sink or folding laundry in the utility room. Nathan, concerned, played back recordings from his phone app. Allan's voice in sleep, guttural, reciting coordinates of unseen celestial threats. This isn't normal, Mom. Nathan said one night, the family gathered in the living room with its plush sectional couch and a fireplace crackling against the cooling 50-degree evenings. Laura nodded, her scientific mind grappling with the inexplicable. We're not giving up. Maybe therapy next. Meanwhile, Wormwood's influence deepened. Allan's work output surged. He drafted papers on comet impacts with eerie prescience, calculating probabilities of Earth-crossing asteroids down to 1 in a million. But at night, the dreams intensified. Visions of stars plummeting, oceans turning brackish, cities crumbling under cosmic debris. He'd wake screaming, Laura holding him as his pulse raced to 90 beats per minute. The entity was patient, weaving its poison slowly, promising revelations that tempted even as they terrified. In my experience as an exorcist, appointed by the Archbishop of Indianapolis back in 2005, I've seen how demons like this exploit our thirst for knowledge. They dangle forbidden fruit, much like in Eden, but it's laced with venom. Allan's case reminded me of others where intellect becomes a gateway for darkness. Science and faith aren't enemies, they're allies against such intrusions. But for the Whitakers, the battle was just ramping up as Wormwood prepared to summon an ally from even deeper abysses. As winter set in during late 2003, with Pasadena's temperatures dipping into the 50s Fahrenheit during the day and frost occasionally dusting the lawns overnight, the presence of Wormwood in Allan's life took a darker turn. It wasn't content to operate alone. Evil seldom is. In my years handling exorcisms, I've performed over 50 since my training in Rome back in 2005 under Father Gabriele Amorth. This pattern holds. Demons form alliances, drawing strength from one another like shadows merging in twilight. Wormwood, drawing from the apocalyptic imagery in Revelation, called forth Abaddon, the angel of the bottomless pit, symbolizing utter destruction and the unleashing of chaos upon creation. It started subtly, as these things often do. One chilly morning, Allan sat at his kitchen table, a sturdy oak piece where the family shared meals, sipping black coffee brewed in their 12-cup Mr. Coffee machine. His eyes glazed over mid-sentence while talking to Laura about her latest JPL project modeling asteroid deflection techniques using thrusters that could nudge rocks weighing millions of tons. Suddenly, that gravelly voice surged through him again. Abaddon, rise from the abyss and join me. Together we shall unmake the stars. Allan's mug slipped from his hand, shattering on the tile floor, coffee spreading like inky veins. He blinked, disoriented, as Laura rushed to clean it up with paper towels. What was that? She asked, her voice steady but edged with concern. Allan shook his head. Nothing, just a headache. But Abaddon had arrived. In Scripture, Abaddon is the destroyer, keeper of the bottomless pit in Revelation chapter 9, loosing locusts upon the earth as a plague. This entity claimed a similar fall, once a sentinel over the cosmic voids, guarding the boundaries where creation met nothingness, but corrupted by a lust for annihilation. I yearned to swallow the light, it would later proclaim through Allan, to drag galaxies into the maw, leaving only silence. Now allied with Wormwood, their goal was a minor apocalypse, not the end of all, but a targeted unraveling through human hands, perverting science into instruments of doom. The effects rippled outward immediately. Laura, who had always approached her work with cool detachment, found herself obsessing over catastrophic scenarios at JPL. Her office, a compact space with dual monitors displaying orbital simulations and walls pinned with satellite photos, became a vortex of anxiety. She'd run models late into the night calculating impact energies in megatons for hypothetical asteroids, the size of football fields hurtling at 20,000 miles per hour. What if one slips through? She'd mutter during staff meetings in the lab's conference room, where engineers in polo shirts discussed propulsion systems. Colleagues noticed one pulled her aside after a presentation, saying, "Laura, you're fixating. These are low probability events, 1 in 100,000 years." But the dreams had started for her too. Vivid nightmares of fiery rocks scorching the skies, turning California's valleys into craters miles wide. Nathan wasn't spared. Back at UCLA, in his shared dorm room with bunk beds and posters of space operas on the walls, he'd wake from sleep terrors, heart racing at 80 beats per minute. Envisioning a falling star, igniting global fires, he'd bolt upright, sweating through his sheets despite the room's controlled 70 degrees from the central AC. During lectures in lecture halls seating 200, his mind wandered to online forums, sites like Reddit's r divided by astronomy, where he'd search for Wormwood star prophecies, scrolling through threads on his laptop during breaks. This can't be real, he'd text his mom from the campus quad, surrounded by palm trees swaying in the breeze. But the fear gnawed, making his grades slip in calculus classes where he'd once excelled, solving integrals that modeled planetary motions. Back in Allan's lab at Caltech, chaos reigned. The room, once orderly with calibrated instruments and humming servers, now felt oppressive. Computers' high-end workstations with terabytes of storage would boot up unprompted, running simulations of comet collisions without input. Screens flickered to life at odd hours, displaying 3D renders of asteroids plowing into Earth at angles that maximize destruction, ejecta clouds blotting out the sun for years. Temperatures plummeted inexplicably. One afternoon, the thermostat read 45 degrees, despite the building's HVAC system pumping warm air at full blast. Allan would enter to find frost on the windows, his breath fogging as if the void of space had leaked in. He began drafting articles under this influence, papers submitted to journals like Icarus, foretelling imminent celestial disasters with data that blended real observations with fabricated omens. One manuscript predicted a rogue comet's path intersecting Earth's orbit within months, calculating kinetic energy equivalent to billions of tons of TNT. His department head, a stern man in his 50s with an office overlooking the campus fountains, called him in. "Allan, this isn't science, it's alarmism," he said, sliding the draft across a desk cluttered with grant proposals. "We're suspending you, pending review. Get some rest." Allan nodded numbly, but inside, Wormwood and Abaddon chuckled, their voices overlapping in his mind like static on a radio tuned between stations. The family tensions boiled over. One evening in their living room, with the gas fireplace flickering at low heat to ward off the 50-degree chill outside, Laura confronted Allan. "You're mixing myths with facts. Science isn't about doomsday prophecies." She paced the rug, a Persian weave they'd bought on a trip to San Francisco years ago. Nathan chimed in from the couch, his laptop open to Bible verses on apocalyptic stars. "Dad, I was the skeptic, but this, it's like you're channeling something." Allan, slumped in an armchair, whispered, "It's not me. They're using me to warn or to terrify." The breaking point came when Allan, in a trance, sliced his palm on a shard of broken glass from a dropped beaker in the kitchen, blood welling up in a line 2 inches long. He dipped a finger in it and began sketching star maps on the countertop, constellations twisted into symbols of ruin. Laura bandaged him with gauze from the first aid kit under the sink, her hands steady from years handling delicate lab equipment, but tears streaked her face. "This has to stop," she said. Though not devout, her background was agnostic. Raised in a secular home, desperation led her to seek help beyond medicine. She drove to St. Andrew's Catholic Church in Pasadena, a historic building with Spanish Revival architecture, stained glass windows depicting saints, and a bell tower rising 80 feet. There, she met Father Michael Rossi, a 55-year-old priest of Italian descent, his voice warm and accented from his upbringing in New York. Father Rossi's office smelled of incense and old books, shelves lined with volumes on theology, and even some on astrophysics. He'd studied science in seminary, believing faith and reason intertwined. Laura poured out the story over herbal tea served in ceramic mugs. The book, the voice, the possessions, the family-wide disturbances. Father Rossi listened intently, his fingers steepled. He'd handled a few deliverance cases in his 30 years of priesthood, trained informally through the International Association of Exorcists. "This sounds like oppression, possibly possession," he said calmly. Wormwood and Abaddon are biblical names for demonic forces, symbols of judgment, but twisted by evil to sow despair. He recognized the signs, the unnatural knowledge, the aversion to holy things. Allan had flinched when Laura suggested church, the physical manifestations. "We need to investigate further," he added, jotting notes on a legal pad. He visited the Whitaker home that weekend, a 10-mile drive from the church. The family gathered in the den, Nathan fidgeting on the edge of his seat. Father Rossi blessed the house with holy water from a small vial, sprinkling it in crosses while reciting prayers in Latin. "Exorciso te, omnis spiritus immunde." Allan reacted, violently convulsing on the floor, his body arching like a bow, the entities snarling through him. "You cannot bind us, priest, the abyss calls." The room grew cold, dropping 10 degrees in minutes, pictures rattling on the walls. Convinced, Father Rossi contacted Archbishop Jose Horacio Gomez of the Los Angeles Archdiocese, a process involving detailed reports faxed from his office machine. The Archbishop, after review in his chancery offices downtown, about 15 miles away, approved an exorcism, rare but necessary. "Proceed with caution," came the directive. Father Rossi assembled a team. Sister Isabella Torres, a 40-year-old nun from a nearby convent who'd studied quantum physics before her vocation and could bridge science and faith, and Dr. Hale, the neurologist, invited as a medical observer despite his skepticism. "I don't believe in this," Hale said over the phone, "but if it helps Allan." Preparations began. They chose the Mount Wilson Observatory for the rites, not a church, but a place of stars, to confront the entities on their turf. The dome, with its 100-foot diameter, would echo prayers under the night sky. Father Rossi explained to the family, "Evil thrives in isolation. We'll fight it with community, truth, and the power of Christ." Laura and Nathan agreed to assist, arming themselves with knowledge, Laura with JPL data printouts, Nathan with his recording. As snow dusted the San Gabriels that December, rare flurries at higher elevations, the stage was set. In my own ministry, I've learned that exorcism isn't spectacle. It's a sober battle, relying on God's authority. The Whitakers were about to learn that too, as the confrontations unfolded amid the hum of telescopes and the whisper of ancient evils. The exorcism rites commenced in early January, of 2004 amid the crisp winter air of Southern California, where daytime highs lingered in the low 60s Fahrenheit and nights on Mount Wilson plunged to near freezing, around 35 degrees. We chose the observatory not for drama, but for symbolism, confronting these celestial pretenders in a temple of human ingenuity under the very stars they claim to corrupt. In my ministry, I've always emphasized that exorcism is no spectacle. It's a solemn invocation of Christ's authority, methodical like a surgeon's work, rooting out malignancy with prayer and perseverance. Father Rossi embodied this, preparing meticulously, fasting the day before each session, and arming himself with a ritual book bound in simple leather, its pages worn from use. The first session unfolded on a clear Friday evening, the team assembling at the base of the mountain before driving up the winding 7-mile road in a convoy. Father Rossi's modest sedan, Sister Isabella's van from the convent, Dr. Hale's SUV, and the Whitakers' family minivan. They parked near the dome, its white structure gleaming under floodlights against the darkening sky. Security had been cleared with Caltech officials framed as a private wellness retreat to avoid scrutiny. Inside the control room, with its array of consoles and screens displaying real-time star fields, they set up a sturdy observing chair bolted to the floor for Allan, holy water in crystal vials, crucifixes placed at cardinal points, and incense burners filling the air with frankincense, its smoke curling up to the 100-foot ceiling. Allan was led in willingly but wearily, his face gaunt from weeks of torment, weight dropped by 15 pounds on his 6-foot frame. They secured him gently with soft restraints, wide Velcro straps around wrists and ankles to prevent harm during manifestations. Laura stood nearby, clutching a folder of JPL printouts on comet trajectories, her knuckles white. Nathan held a portable projector, ready to display sci-fi clips as anchors to reality. Sister Isabella, in her habit with a silver cross necklace, booted up a laptop connected to the telescope's feed, pulling Hubble images from NASA's public database, vast nebulae and galaxies, reminders of creation's beauty. Dr. Hale monitored vitals with a portable EKG machine, electrodes taped to Allan's chest, baseline heart rate at 72 beats per minute. Father Rossi began with the rite of exorcism, his voice steady in Latin: Exorcizo te, omnis spiritus immunde, in nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti. He sprinkled holy water, and Allan's reaction was immediate, his body arched, eyes rolling back, as Wormwood's voice boomed. Foolish priest, I am the star that embitters. Your words are dust in the void. The room's temperature dropped sharply, breath visible, gauges showing 40 degrees despite the heaters running at full capacity. Screens flickered, displaying unbidden images, simulated comet strikes, pulverizing cities, debris clouds measured in miles thick. Abaddon joined the fray, its tone a hollow rumble like an earthquake's precursor. The abyss opens. I will drag this world into nothingness. Allan's limbs strained against the straps, veins bulging, as illusions manifested. Team members reported seeing phantom stars streaking across the dome's ceiling, though the slit was closed. Sister Isabella countered scientifically. She projected real-time quorums from the telescope, calculating orbits aloud. See here, she said, her voice calm. This comet's path deviates by only 0.01 astronomical units, no divine wrath, just gravity. She cross-referenced with biblical passages on her tablet, quoting Psalm 104. He set the earth on its foundations. It can never be moved. Laura stepped forward during a lull, holding Allan's hand despite the chill emanating from his skin. This isn't knowledge, it's poison, she declared, her physicist's precision cutting through. Our data shows the universe expanding at 73 kilometers per second per megaparsec, ordered, not chaotic. Nathan cued a clip from Interstellar, the wormhole scene, projecting it on a blank wall. Dad, remember? Exploration, not end times. Allan's eyes focused briefly, a tear escaping, but the entities roared back, causing the mountain to tremble faintly, a microquake registered at magnitude 2.1 by nearby USGS sensors, though no fault lines explained it. The session lasted 2 hours, ending with adjurations. Father Rossi commanded in Christ's name, "Depart, unclean spirits." Allan vomited a blackish bile-like tar, splattering the floor, analyzed later by Hale as containing trace meteoritic particles, iron and nickel impossible from diet. They unbound Allan, exhausted but coherent, driving down in silence. "It's working," Rossi told the group over coffee at a diner off the freeway, neon signs buzzing outside. "But these beings resist, they'll test us." Subsequent rites built on this, spaced weekly to allow recovery. By the second, mid-January, with rain slickening the road's accumulation of half an inch, making the ascent treacherous, they incorporated more elements. Father Rossi read from Revelation directly, chapter 8, on Wormwood's fall, flipping the script. "But God triumphs. The Lamb opens the seals, not you." Wormwood responded by forcing Allan to spout cursed formulas, equations scrawled verbally, predicting fictional dooms like black holes spawning nearby, defying relativity. Sister Isabella debunked them live, using software to simulate. "Your math fails conservation of energy. It's illusion." Physical assaults intensified. During the third session, under a full moon casting silvery light through the open dome, slit stars visible at magnitudes down to 6, Abaddon manipulated the telescope, its motors whining as the 200-inch mirror swung wildly, nearly clipping Dr. Hale. "The pit claims all," it thundered. Hale, skeptical no more after seeing Allan's pupils dilate to full black, administered sedatives mid-right, a mild dose of lorazepam via syringe, but it barely dulled the frenzy. Incense smoke twisted into shapes, serpentine forms mimicking locusts from Abaddon's biblical horde. Family involvement deepened the emotional core. Laura shared memories during lulls, their wedding in a small chapel 20 years prior, vows under stained glass. "We promised to face unknowns together," she'd say, voice breaking. Nathan read from Allan's old papers, highlighting discoveries like comet compositions with water isotopes matching Earth's oceans. "This is your legacy, Dad, not their lies." These human anchors provoked the loudest protest, Wormwood wailing about stolen glory, Abaddon threatening eternal fall. One night, the ancient book brought for confrontation ignited spontaneously on a side table, flames licking but not consuming its pages, heat reaching 120 degrees in a localized spot. Father Rossi doused it with holy water, steam hissing, and commanded revelation. The entities admitted using such tomes as lures throughout history, ensnaring scholars from Babylonian astronomers to Renaissance alchemists. As February dawned, with wildflowers budding early, due to mild rains, purple lupines dotting the hillsides, the rites grew grueling. Allan's body bore marks, unexplained bruises like impact craters, each an inch across. Vital signs spiked blood pressure to 180 over 110 during peaks. Yet progress showed, intervals of clarity lengthened, Allan reciting the Lord's Prayer unprompted, entities' voices weakening to whispers. In reflecting on cases like this, I've seen how demons exploit divided science versus faith, but here, the fusion prevailed. Father Rossi's approach mirrored what I learned in Rome: patience, humility, reliance on sacraments. The team prayed the rosary between sessions, beads clicking in the quiet dome, under constellations like Orion hunting across the sky. Dr. Hale, converted by evidence, later attended Mass. The battles raged, but light pierced the dark, setting the stage for resolution. The climax arrived on March 22nd, 2004, a date that coincided with World Water Day, ironically tied to themes of purity and pollution, echoing Wormwood's biblical taint of the waters. Up on Mount Wilson, the air was mild for early spring, daytime temperatures climbing to 68 degrees Fahrenheit, with a light breeze rustling the pines that dotted the 5,700-foot summit. The team gathered at dusk, the sun dipping below the horizon in a blaze of orange, casting long shadows over the observatory grounds where wild deer occasionally grazed on sparse grass. This final rite wasn't rushed. Father Rossi had discerned through prayer and observation that the entities were weakening, their holds fracturing like ice under warming Sunday. They convened in the dome once more, the massive structure humming faintly from auxiliary power generators chugging outside, providing backup electricity to the tune of several kilowatts, ensuring no interruptions. Allan, now visibly stronger after weeks of spiritual warfare, walked in unaided, though his steps carried the weight of exhaustion. his once lean frame down another 5 pounds, from sporadic fasting encouraged by Rossi. The chair awaited, but this time, restraints were minimal, just loose ties, a sign of trust in the process. Laura carried a bouquet of fresh lilies from their garden, symbols of resurrection, placed on a makeshift altar alongside a chalice of blessed water. Nathan set up his equipment nearby, a small speaker playing soft Gregorian chants downloaded from a monastery site, volumes low at 30 decibels to avoid overwhelming the space. Sister Isabella adjusted the telescope feed on her laptop, pulling fresh data from recent Hubble uploads, images of distant quasars pulsing with energy equivalent to trillions of suns, testaments to cosmic order. Dr. Hale, now fully committed after witnessing the inexplicable, hooked up monitors tracking not just heart rate but brain waves via a portable EEG, electrodes placed with adhesive pads on Allan's scalp. Baseline normal, he noted, voice steady as the machine beeped softly. Father Rossi, vested in a simple white alb with a purple stole for Lent's lingering season, opened his ritual book to the concluding prayers, his hands steady from years of sacraments. The rite began as stars emerged overhead through the open slit, a 20-foot gap revealing the Milky Way's band, visible to magnitude 5 in the dark skies. Rossi invoked the Trinity, his Latin resonant, adjurote, serpens antique, per judicem vivorum et mortuorum. Allan settled, but soon the entity stirred. Wormwood's voice emerged first, weaker now, a hiss rather than a boom. Behold, mortal, the secrets I offer paths through wormholes, bending space at speeds beyond light's 300,000 kilometers per second. Join me and know eternity. It tempted with visions, team members glimpsed fleeting holograms in the air, like projections of parallel universes branching infinitely, defying quantum probabilities. Abaddon countered with threats, its rumble fading. The pit yawns wide. I will devour your sun, collapsing it to a singularity denser than 1 billion tons per cubic inch. The dome shook mildly, vibrations registering on nearby seismographs as a 1.5 magnitude tremor, loose bolts rattling in the century-old framework. Allan's body tensed, sweat beating despite the cooling 48-degree interior, his EEG spiking with theta waves indicative of altered states. But he fought back, drawing from reservoirs deepened by the ordeal. No, he gasped, his own voice breaking through. Your knowledge is hollow. God created the heavens, the vastness measured in billions of light years, not for destruction, but wonder. Father Rossi pressed on, sprinkling holy water that sizzled on Allan's skin like droplets on a hot skillet. In the name of Jesus Christ, who calmed the seas and commanded the stars, depart. Sister Isabella interjected with facts. Your lies crumble our probes, measure cosmic microwave background at 2.7 Kelvin, echoes of the Big Bang, a designed beginning. She displayed spectra on the screen, lines peaking at wavelengths, proving elemental abundances forged in stellar furnaces. Laura knelt beside Allan, whispering encouragements drawn from their shared life. Remember our hike in Yosemite last year? Half dome at sunrise, elevation 8,000 feet, proof of beauty enduring. Her touch grounded him, pulse steadying at 80 beats. Nathan amplified the chants, the harmonious voices filling the space, countering the entity's discord. Wormwood pleaded one last time. Observe with me the multiverse's threads, infinite possibilities. But Allan, eyes clearing, shouted, Enough! The Lord is the true creator, hanging the earth on nothing, as Job declares. Abaddon thrashed verbally. The abyss swallows all your puny planet, a speck orbiting at 93 million miles from its star. Yet its power waned, the tremors ceasing as Rossi commanded expulsion. By the blood of the Lamb, be gone to the place prepared for you. A brilliant flash ensued, not pyrotechnics, but a perceived luminescence, like a meteor streaking at 20 miles per second, illuminating the dome in white light that blinded momentarily. Allan convulsed once, then went limp, exhaling deeply as if shedding a heavy coat. The air warmed instantly, thermostat climbing 10 degrees. Doctor, Hale checked readings. All normal brain waves stabilizing, no anomalies. The entity's presences vanished, leaving silence broken only by the telescope's faint tracking motors. They unbound Allan, who rose shakily, embracing Laura and Nathan in a tearful huddle. "I saw the pit," he murmured, voice hoarse. Like a black hole, event horizon, inescapable, but light broke through. Father Rossi blessed them, closing with the sign of the cross. The team descended the mountain that night, the drive winding through fog banks rolling in from the Pacific, headlights piercing the mist. Sister Isabella noted in her journal, "Faith and reason united prevail." Dr. Hale, transformed, later pursued theological studies part-time. In the weeks following, recovery unfolded gradually. By April, with Pasadena blooming roses unfurling in gardens, temperatures in the 70s, Allan returned to Caltech on probation, his suspension lifted after psychological clearance. He shifted focus to sustainable astronomy, projects on space debris mitigation, tracking objects in low Earth orbit at altitudes of 200 miles, advocating for dark sky preservation to reduce light pollution measured in lumens per square meter. His papers now wove in ethical considerations, citing how unchecked pursuit could harm, but guided inquiry enlightens. Laura collaborated with him at JPL, co-authoring grants for planetary defense systems detecting near-Earth objects via radar arrays bouncing signals off asteroids up to millions of miles distant. Their debates resumed, but enriched. "The universe's design points to purpose," Allan would say over dinners of grilled salmon on their patio, overlooking the now serene San Gabriels. Laura smiled. "And science reveals it with faith as compass." Nathan graduated UCLA that spring, cap and gown in a ceremony at Pauley Pavilion, seating 12,000, his thesis on exoplanet detection earning honors. He pursued graduate work in astrophysics, balancing skepticism with openness, volunteering at church youth groups, sharing how movies like Arrival mirrored real quests for understanding without fear. Father Rossi documented the case anonymously, submitting to Vatican archives via encrypted channels, emphasizing, "The cosmos belongs to God, demons pervert it, but Christ redeems." The medieval book, its pages finally crumbling after the flash, was incinerated in a controlled burn at the church, ashes scattered on hallowed ground. Years on, the Whitaker's story circulated quietly in scientific and faith circles, a cautionary tale at Caltech seminars, whispered over coffee in faculty lounges. It reminds us, knowledge is a double-edged sword, sharp for progress, but dangerous if wielded without humility. In my own encounters, from possessions mimicking illnesses to oppressions exploiting ambitions, I've seen this truth. Evil tempts with shortcuts, but true light comes from surrendering to the one who spoke the stars into being. Trust in that, and no abyss prevails.